Ho ho buddies, once Borderline Games. I'm Gareth and today we're playing Chaos Head. Last time, we were about to look at the photo that Shogun had sent us that Yua is convinced that we did the murder for. And also she thinks that maybe we have precognitive powers. Also, we had a little glimpse at the detectives that are trying to solve the crime. They've got footage from the, what were they calling it? The crucifixion crime or whatever it is, murder. And they've got footage from a car park that they've enhanced. You know, you see in the CSI series, they go enhance, and they enhanced the 6 seconds of footage and saw that it was a school kid. It was actually me. And the guy was like, I'm going to hunt him down and I'm going to get him. And now we're going to look at this picture. Let's look at the picture. I mean, it was a pretty fucking nasty image. Grotesque as all hell, too. I was sure that just looking at it would throw me right back to the scene of the crucifixion, where that violent scene had taken place right in front of me. But even then, I needed to expose Yua's flawed logic and therefore guarantee my own safety and innocence. Thankfully, since Sarah Tam was there for me, I could handle a little bit of gore. Mustering all the courage I had, I double-clicked the file. Is this me? Gah. God, it was so gory. But compared to the crucifixion scene I'd seen in person, it wasn't quite as bad. Telling myself that the image had to be fake, I was just barely able to stomach it. When I'd first received the image, I'd closed it immediately after looking at it once. I hadn't inspected it thoroughly. This time, holding back the urge to vomit, I decided to examine the image in excruciating detail. Excrucifixion. I didn't know much about how to tell whether a picture was fake or not, but taking a look at the shadows, seeing if there was anything off about the surrounding area, and other stuff like that, should probably be enough. The only possibility I had in mind was that the photo had been taken in advance, and the crucifixion corpse had been put on top of it using CGI. And then the day after Shogun had sent the picture to me, they'd executed the crime exactly as they'd edited in the image. Thanks to the poor resolution and how dark the image was, I could only see the stakes, leaving the identity of the victim unclear. Light was only hitting the area surrounding the corpse, yet something about the image was just begging for me to look at the crucifixion itself. I felt like that was the intent of the person who'd made it. I mean, come on. Focusing that much light around the corpse was kind of overkill, don't you think? Well, it wasn't like I'd been paying close attention to the actual crime scene, so I couldn't really jump to conclusions. In the picture, the demon girl wasn't standing in front of the crucified corpse. But when I opened my eyes wide and looked even closer, I noticed a silhouette in a dark spot on the left side of the image. I'd almost completely missed it. Due to the low res of the image, the shadow the figure stood in blended perfectly into the surrounding scenery. You could easily miss it if you weren't paying close attention. Obviously the image was fake, but what if the person who'd taken the photo had accidentally left themselves in it? If they had, it was possible that they'd forgotten to edit themselves out when they tampered with the image. It looked like they were wearing a Sumai uniform. In that case, it had to be the demon girl. She'd been wearing one at the time of the crime, after all. When I took a closer look, I noticed that the figure's hair was actually pretty short. The demon girl had long hair like Yua. Alright then, time for some computer magic. I needed the details here. I opened up some image processing software and dragged the image in. Then with a big gulp, I selected the levels option in the adjustments menu and brightened the once darkened corners of the image. It's me! What? What the hell? Huh? What? I don't... That's... Pictured on the screen. Pictured on the screen was unmistakably... me. How was it me? It didn't make any sense. I'd never even been there before September 29th. It was fake. It had to be fake. I couldn't find any bit of proof that it was, but it absolutely had to be. Nothing made sense otherwise. I mean, Shogun had sent the image on the 28th, and the crucifixion murder case had occurred on the 29th. If the image was of what had happened on the 29th, then that would mean it was a picture taken from the future. Do you have precognitive powers? Fuck you. There's no way I have powers! I kicked the plastic bottles at my feet and closed the paint program. I checked the file's property to see when it was made, and then... I lost all words. The timestamp was the 28th, but that was the least of my worries now. In the comments section of the properties menu was a single, inconspicuous sentence. A sentence my eyes couldn't look away from. Whose eyes are those eyes? Wow. Ugh. I slammed my hands on the keyboard before shoving it to the edge of my desk. I clutched my head. Ugh. Save me, Sarah. I could barely hold back my tears. What the hell had I done to deserve a whole week of nothing but more and more insane bullshit? Why was I the only one that had to deal with this shit? Hang on a second. If they had somehow managed to get a photo of me, and then they'd edited it into the image of the crime scene. Edited it. That would either mean Shogun had taken a picture of me without my consent, or that he'd somehow obtained my photo from another source. And considering how he'd suddenly entered the chat room and started talking to me right after Grim had left, he'd likely been aiming for me and me alone from the very start. Shogun might have very well discovered my real identity. If that was true, then Shogun, the demon girl, anyone could raid my base at any moment, and then I'd be abducted. I felt a chill on the nape of my neck. It was the gaze again. There was something there, watching me. Don't look at me. Did you really think I'd turn around? I knew the rules of the game better than anyone. The "it'll take more than that to turn me around, make me turn around" game. Fear sent goosebumps all over my body, and I felt a strong urge to check that the door was locked, but instead of doing that, I just continued to stare at my monitor, as I was too stubborn to let myself loose. Really stared at it. When able to calm down, I opened my default word processor and wrote down everything on my mind. Demon girl, cold-blooded murderer, has precognitive powers. Shogun, demon girl's underling. Yua, Shogun's underling. That has to be it. As I stared fearfully at the word demon, I began to wonder if the girl at the crime scene was actually a real demon. I mean, come on. She couldn't be human by any means. If she was a demon, she might actually be able to see the future. And if she could see the future, projecting a scene from the future onto a picture via psychic photography would be child's play. It would line up perfectly with how she'd somehow managed to carry out the gruesome crucifixion all on her own. She'd then gotten her underling Shogun to send the image to me, a person who knew would end up accidentally witnessing the crime scene. I didn't know why she'd done that. Maybe it was a threat. This'll be you next, if you tell anyone what you saw. Or maybe it was a death sentence. You're next. If that really was what it meant, then I'm fucked. They could come and murder me come and murder me at any moment. Okay. Okay. Cut into somewhere else. Kusunoki Yua faced the PC in her room, her profile gravely serious. She swiftly read through the information displayed on the monitor. Before long, Yua let out a small sigh and released her hand from the mouse, glancing at a piece of paper sitting within reach of her. Oh yeah. It was the very same paper she'd put before Nishijo Takumi the day before, the printout of the chat log between Neidhart and Shogun. Nishijo-kun. Yua muttered a single name. The view of Takumi sitting alone on that Shoto Park bench appeared in her mind before she quickly shook her head to drown it out. Suddenly, she looked behind herself in surprise. Just now it felt like someone was watching me. Her gaze stopped upon a large, stuffed Girofroggy enshrined on her bed. Wondering if it had just been her imagination, she tilted her head in puzzlement. Then she slowly rose to her feet, walked over to her bed, and fell onto it head first. Okay. The sheets smelled of the sun. It seemed that her mother had kindly dried the futon earlier today. Yua buried her face in that relieving scent, her gaze wandering about vacantly. Her room was very neat and orderly, placing her meticulous personality on full display. This especially applied to her large bookshelf, which was rather incongruous for a room sized at around 13 square meters. It was packed tightly with countless books, leaving hardly any gaps. However, charmingly, the lower half consisted of nothing but complex academic books, computing-related books, and other similar material, contrasting greatly with the upper half, which was filled with shoujo, manga, and anime DVDs. With another sigh, Yua turned her body face up and stared at the ceiling. What is that? Dissociative identity disorder, okay. She muttered the name of the mental illness she'd just been researching. An explanation related to it was still displayed on her monitor. The Encyclopedia of Useless Knowledge. It must be so hard. Yua hugged the stuffed Girofroggy by her pillow tightly as she thought about Takumi. But, However, her expression soon vanished, replaced only by the gritting of her teeth. And we're back to Takumi. It hurt to breathe. All I was doing was looking things up on my PC. Yet it hurt to breathe. I could feel my heart pounding harder than it ever had before. And of course the feeling that something was watching me would not go away. I was still just barely keeping myself from turning around, but I knew I couldn't do it for much longer. What the fuck is wrong with you? Show yourself, asshole! I cried out angrily at whatever it was. Surely it wasn't the demon girl, right? Oh god, what if it was? She could be using second sight or clairvoyance or some other demonic power to spy on me. The chills on my back, on the back of my neck were gradually growing stronger, to the point where they were getting slightly painful, like jolts of electricity coursing through my body. I was covered from head to toe in sweat. The front of my t-shirt was completely soaked. But damn it. Unable to take it anymore, I whipped around in my chair as forcefully as I could, and yet all I saw was my room, in the same condition as always. I didn't see a single thing that shouldn't have been there. How are you not there? Who are you? With a yell that was closer to a shriek than anything, I burst up from my chair and went to make sure the door was locked. And much to my relief it was. I wiped away the sweat on my forehead with my sleeve. That was weird. Weird fisheye effect. Returning to my PC, I focused on the monitor once more. It was still displaying what I'd been researching earlier. Precognition. I don't like this. The Wiki Pedophilia, the Encyclopedia of Useless Knowledge. Okay, I'll ignore that for now. When I was a kid, I truly believed that precognition existed. Precognition existed. That psychics existed. And if I was being completely honest, I still did to a degree. That was why my first thought had been that the image from Shogun and the Demon Girl was a precognitive photograph. A thought which only drove me to look into it all the more. What if maybe, just maybe, there were tons of psychics all over the world and I just didn't know? Back when I was a kid, when that bus accident happened, I'd managed something that had been pretty close to precognition. For that reason, I couldn't completely rule out its existence. But no matter how much I researched, all I could find was extremely dubious articles about the occult, voodoo shit, or whatever else. There was absolutely nothing that proved scientifically whether it existed or not. There has to be at least something. Growing increasingly frustrated, I violently tapped away at the keyboard. I couldn't deal with how anxious not having a concrete answer made me. Was the world really telling me to give up? To wait here trembling in fear of demons that might or might not come? I couldn't stay sane like that. Of course, I would have vastly preferred to learn that precognition didn't exist, but regardless of what the truth was, I needed to know it. Badly. Pretty much out of options, I decided to look at Channel's occult board. The place was typically home to nothing but total BS noise, lies and misinformation. Mainly. But it actually had some pretty mind-blowing and even useful information scattered on it sometimes. Biting back how frantic I was, I opened up Channel. Then I clicked on the occult board and gave precognition a search. And when I did... Number of dudes who want Fez-Tan Queen of Precognition to kick their shit in. Okay. Okay. My search pulled up a surprising number of threads, about 30 of them. Was precognition a hot topic on Channel at the moment? With a gulp, I checked the thread, titles one by one. Phantasm. FES. Most of the threads contained those two key words. In addition, new gen discussion had also wormed its way in, with lots of unsettling terms like pathetic lyrics and murderer being used. Having never heard of Phantasm before, I went to Google them. Apparently they were a Shibuya-based 4-piece gothic punk band that had been doing live concerts recently. They were so popular, in fact, that they were completely dominating the indie music scene, with a female vocalist known only as Fez, or FES, Fez. Flat Earth Society. Anyway, to check whether it was related to precognition or not, I clicked on the thread at the top titled Precognition and Prophecies. Phantasm General, New Gen 43, and gave the contents a brief skim. Black Mass. What are we looking at here? It's a trap. I don't like this. 4chan. Brainwashing. Okay. Those lyrics. Depending on how you interpreted them, they could be seen as referring to the group dive. I see. Little do they know their screams will soon turn to silence and repose shall fall upon us as we link hand in hand within the wind. And yet those lyrics had been released 2 months ago, which meant they hadn't been written after the crucifixion. Is this precognition? Could it just be a coincidence? Or could Phantasm be yet another one of the demon girl's underlings? I read the thread in more detail only to find out that each of the 3 new-gen incidents had all been prophesied by Phantasm's lyrics. However, the lyrics for the songs that supposedly prophesied the man-child and crucifixion incidents had not been posted on @channel. Apparently, uploading them online was viewed as a taboo of sorts. The philosophy seemed to be, if you really want to know, just go to the concerts and buy an album yourself. Regardless, there were a great number of people online trying to predict the next new-gen case based on the songs Phantasm had performed thus far. And apparently, ever since New Gen had kicked off, Phantasm's albums had been completely selling out. They'd been so successful, in fact, that even the mainstream media had picked up on it. Gothic band boasting cult following rises among the youth of Shibuya. Hang on, I need to read that sentence again. Gothic band boasting cult following rises among the youth of Shibuya. News stories like that were popping up all over the place. The one writing the lyrics was the head singer, Fez. Nobody knew her real name. What if Fez was actually the demon girl? If she was, it would explain how she managed to prophesize the incidents literal months before they'd occurred. The demon girl was the culprit after all. I tried doing an image search, but I couldn't find any good photos of her face. All the pictures were taken by phones during her concerts, and they were so blurry that I couldn't even begin to make out her face. Shit. I wiped my sweat-drenched forehead with the hem of my shirt. I was frustrated. I was scared. I couldn't believe anything. I didn't even want to see anything. Several emotions swirled within me, suffocating me. My breathing hadn't even come close to stabilizing this entire time. But even so, I knew one thing for certain. I needed to see Fez's face. With trembling fingers, I typed in Phantasm's name and clicked on the official website. The site was mostly black, decorated only by text of a uniform, deep crimson colour. It was unrelenting in its simplicity, and yet it felt so incredibly eerie and strange. There was barely anything on the site at all, just basic information on their concerts and discography. There wasn't even a single image. There were no profiles of the band members, nor anything on their song lyrics. Well, if they were the culprit, they wouldn't want their face on the internet anyway. Talk about thorough. I took a look at their performance schedule and saw that they typically performed about every other week. Their next concert was the day after tomorrow. If I went to it, I'd be able to check whether Fez was the demon girl or not. But even if I did find out they were one and the same, what would I even do? Report Fez to the police? Cry and beg for her to leave me alone? Bring a crucifix and attempt a mock exorcism? Yeah, none of those were going to happen. I was up against a demon. There was no way in hell an otaku freak like me could come out on top. Problem is, if I didn't, I'd die. She'd transform my corpse into her newest art piece and I'd be posted on the All Things New Gen site as yet another case. Fuck that. But if I didn't do something, I'd never find out what that picture of me was that Shogun had sent really meant. And on the off chance that Fez wasn't connected to that demon girl, maybe I could ask her to help me fight against whoever the demon girl actually was. Like that's ever going to happen. I'd never survive going to a concert. I'd never been to one in my life. That sort of thing was infinitely beyond my comfort zone. Not to mention concert halls were cramped and dark and noisy and crowded. Just imagining a place like that made me want to hurl. I was at my wit's end. I had no idea what to do. The chills on the back of my neck still hadn't gone away, and the painful, prickling sensation suddenly turned into a burning one. I looked behind me yet again, but like always, nobody was there. Just stop, please. I closed my eyes tightly, focusing on nothing other than the waiting for the gaze to disappear. I didn't want to go through this torment for the rest of my life. For all I knew, the gaze would straight up kill me someday. Think. Takumi. What can I do? Think. Okay. Next day. Hiding in the shadow of a telephone pole, I looked at the Gigantes concert hall from afar. After agonizing over it all day yesterday, I'd somehow managed to nut up and did what needed to be done. So here I was. Gigante. It was located on a narrow street in Shibuya, beneath the elevated railroad tracks. It had a very distinct red brick exterior. The exterior was lit up too, giving off an old-fashioned, austere vibe that made it feel as if I'd been transported back in time to the 50s or something. To think that a spot like this in Shibuya of all places... No, to think that a spot like this was in Shibuya of all places, I had no idea it even existed until yesterday. It was only 5 minutes from the station on foot, yet there weren't very many people at all. Every once in a while a train would pass over the elevated tracks with a tremendous roar, and a telephone pole I was hiding behind would tremble, slightly, but that was about it. Just a moment ago there'd been a bunch of what appeared to be Phantasm fans in front of the Gigante. Some of them were wearing outfits so out there I'd almost mistaken them for cosplayers. However, what surprised me the most was that there honestly weren't that many of them. Despite being such a huge topic online, there must have been no more than 100 people there. Regardless, they were all inside the building now. The concert had already begun, but since none of the audio managed to bleed outside, it certainly didn't feel like it. My heart palpitations had gone away after I'd fallen asleep yesterday, but they'd come back with a vengeance the second I'd arrived in front of the venue. It had been so hard to breathe. I'd almost thought I was dealing with some kind of heart failure. But really I knew exactly why it was so bad. This place was filled with a thick, impenetrable darkness. The demon girl and her underlings could be lurking around any corner. Knowing that, I've been on the lookout for anyone that might attack me ever since I got here. The sheer anxiety and paranoia was comparable to what it felt like going through the Wands Volcano Dungeon in ESO. Mobs in the Wands Volcano Dungeon were OP as hell, and it was surrounded by the kind of lava that insta-killed you if you so much as clipped it with your pinky toe. That shit couldn't have been playtested. The amount of times I died there, holy hell. I wiped the sweat off my forehead with a hand towel and gulped down a gob of saliva. Right as I did, the door at the top of the stairs opened, and the furious beating of drums reverberated from inside Gigantes for a few seconds. A single guy exited the door. He jogged nimbly down the stairs and then toward me. Ah. Sup, Taku? Been waiting long? I'd invited Masumi-kun to go to the venue with me. As I didn't know his phone number, I'd been forced to go to school today just to ask him to. If he hadn't come with me, I probably wouldn't have been able to make it this far. And even if I'd somehow forced myself to go into the building alone, if the demon girl was there, it would be a certified game over. So I had Masumi-kun operate as a scout. I did feel bad about throwing him into the line of fire, so I obviously hadn't told him about that part. The only people I could rely on were him and Nanami, so I picked the less annoying of the two, Masumi-kun. I even covered the ticket cost, so in a sense you could say I'd hired him for 1,000 yen. Right, here's your CD. I grabbed one for myself too. Masumi-kun handed me a Phantasm album. They were being sold for an outrageous premium in online auctions, but I'd heard on that channel that they were also available at their concerts, so I'd asked Masumi-kun to buy one for me. And now that I had one, I'd achieved half of the goals I'd set out for myself. As for the remaining half... Honestly though, they're way better than I thought they'd be. Phantasm, I mean. Masumi-kun had been acting pretty excited ever since he'd exited the venue. Never really listened to him before, because you know me, I'm no sheep. Besides, I figured they'd be overhyped. But just that little bit I heard just now was enough to make me a real fan. The other thing I'd asked Masumi-kun to do was report anything in particular that stood out about the band members. I knew they would all come out on stage once the concert started, so all I'd wanted him to do was quickly scan, then head back to me right after. And yet, despite my very specific instructions, he hadn't come back for a full 5 minutes after the show started. This was probably because he'd listened to the entirety of the first song. And dude, the singer? Fine-ass woman right there. You've got some good taste, my man. I sighed internally, thinking with the wrong head like usual. Why was I even surprised? So much for I'm no sheep. What'd she look like? Oh, right. The report. I dig this, by the way. Kind of feels like I'm a detective or some shit, you know? Masumi-kun grinned to himself, and I pressed him again to tell me what Fez's appearance was. Well, for starters, she had short hair. Huh? And just like that, there was already a huge discrepancy. Did that mean Fez wasn't the demon girl? No, wait. I couldn't let myself jump to conclusions here. She could have cut her hair, or she could have used hair extensions, or she could have changed it in some other way. It wouldn't surprise me if she'd been in disguise when I'd seen her at the crime scene. She had the hottest bod. Real hourglass type shit. And she was tall, too. Might even be the same height as me. She's tall. And the same height as you. Masumi-kun and I were about the same height, which meant Fez was probably about 170 centimeters tall. Pretty tall for a girl. But I hadn't gotten that impression at all when I'd encountered the demon girl. My memories from back then were hazy, but I still felt like the demon girl had been shorter than me. Yet another thing that didn't line up then. Anything else? Oh yeah, she had this real aloof vibe to her. Too cool for school type thing. The way she spoke had a big part in that. She's the kind of girl to talk in whispers. As for the tits, she doesn't have much going on. That goth outfit more than made up for that. It was crazy how hot it was. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Oh god damn it, every single word he said was completely fucking useless. Then again, I'd only gotten a quick look at the demon girl, so I couldn't exactly list her features. This plan was probably doomed from the start. But anyway, since you're so interested in Fez, you really ought to take a look for yourself. Let's hit it. Huh? Masumi-kun began to push me from behind, forcing me to go up the stairs to Gigantes. I desperately tried to fight back, but Masumi-kun was stronger than me. I couldn't get away. Wait. You want to see Fez's face, right? Come on, be honest. Fooling around with another chick's a big part of a man's life. Taku, my boy, you're finally becoming a man. What? Just pretend that the glasses girl you went home with the other day doesn't exist. I'll be forgetting about Tanaka tonight myself. What the hell is he talking about? I tried to stand my ground and fight back, but to my horror, I realised that I was already at the top of the stairs. While it was only the second floor, if I were to slip and fall, it would hurt like hell. Just the thought made me stop resisting as hard. And in that moment of weakness, my entire body weight was sent crashing through the door and into the venue. The second I hit the inside, an explosion of sound blasted my eardrums. I never experienced something so loud before. Even the pit of my stomach was being forcibly shaken by the vibrations. It was so intense it felt as if my entire body was being crushed to pieces. There were no seats in the venue. Everyone was standing up to watch. They were all rocking their bodies, in rhythm with each other, shouting "Fairs, fairs, fairs," as their fists shot up and down. Still, nowhere near the level of Watage performance. Watage? Watage? Unique cheer or performance that a selection of fans enact at idol concerts. Okay. 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 The heat was devastating. It made me want to vomit. I might have been an otaku, but I was definitely not the type to obsess over idols or voice actors. Honestly, I hated this kind of atmosphere. I could tell I stuck out like a sore thumb, but thankfully, nobody was paying any attention to me. There were so many people in front of me I could barely see the stage at the far end of the room. Just the blinding stage lights, and the faint figures of 4 people standing under them. And as I was getting overwhelmed by everything happening around me, Masumi-kun handed me a plastic cup of soda. It seemed like Masumi-kun had paid for my ticket too. I'd have to make sure to pay him back later. Before I knew it, the song was over. The audience clapped and cheered. Then, having seemingly calmed down a little bit, everyone brought down their fists. Thanks to that, the road to the stage finally opened up and I was able to see it clearly. I got a good look at the short-haired girl standing in the middle of the stage. She was definitely not the demon girl. Your tune is better than usual today. I can hear your voices clearly. The world is very translucent. The voice coming through the amp sounded nothing like the demon girl that had... the voice coming through the amp sounded nothing like the demon girl that had said those cryptic words to me. Masumi-kun was right. Fez definitely had an aloof vibe to her. Despite her short hair, she didn't feel boyish. She gave off this mysterious aura with a mix of charm, allure, and a hint of distance. And to top it all off, the silver accessories she was wearing all glittered, fantastically as they reflected the lights. It felt like I was starting to understand why there were so many threads about her on @channel. In this kind of concert, I'd always thought that the band members would be more energetic, but Fez seemed incredibly indifferent during the intermission. She was pretty much the exact opposite of the excited audience. Maybe that was just the type of person she was. But it seemed like the audience wasn't surprised by that. They just stayed silent during the break, listening closely to Fez's words. Perhaps it's the gate to Cocytus has been closed. What is that? The 2 rivers located at the entrance to the underworld. Okay. I'm sorry, what? Cocytus? What language was she even speaking? The world's equilibrium has been maintained for a millennia. Since the birth of the Greater Will. However, now it is crumbling. It is so very unstable. And thus I shall sing. I shall accept your chaos. Head. Oh, I guess they were a goth punk band. So the band members probably had characters that they played. Maybe it was an easy way to win over the hearts of fans. Just spout some random nonsense then that hinted that it might mean something, giving it enough mystique to keep people engrossed. Speaking of mystique, Fez was holding something strange in her hand. In her left hand was a plain old mic, but in the other she was holding some sort of weirdly shaped mic stand. It looked kind of like a sword. It was shaped so elegantly it felt sinister. It looked so sharp that if you even so much as grazed it, it would slice your finger in two. It was huge too, as tall as Fez in fact. There were also lines of glass embedded into it, which glowed with an ominous blue light. I couldn't tell if it was really a sword or not, but either way, it wasn't half bad as a character accessory, no complaints there. I was strangely captivated by it. Then using only her right arm, Fez casually lifted the huge mic stand. Oops. And with an underhand grip, she swung it sideways. The blue light from the glass drew a wide arc with its afterglow. What the hell? That was so dangerous. What if it hit someone in the crowd? That wasn't a mic stand. Could it be a sword? And every night she would use it to cut the throat of some poor audience member, harvesting blood to offer to the demon girl or something. So is this concert actually some sort of black mass organised by a bunch of witches? A fierce chill ran down my spine just thinking about it. Goosebumps covered my entire body. I should really get out of here ASAP, but the moment I thought about that, Fez let out a gentle whisper. Up next, our third song of the night is The Necklace of Vajrayana. The crowd let out a huge cry of joy upon hearing that. Bo. A moment later, the members of Phantasm all started playing and a second flood of sound poured into my ears. A thunderous roar came from the speakers, a roar that felt like it was going to blow out my eardrums. How had these people not gone deaf yet, hanging out in places like this all of the time? Looking to my side, I noticed Masumi-kun was fully into it, pumping his fists in sync. But is it a sword? With the rest of the audience. The intro ended, Fez began to sing. And when I heard the lyrics, I swallowed hard. She was singing the prophetic song that had been posted all over our channel. It was a dark piece that didn't feel the slightest bit optimistic. Even its melody felt like a religious psalm. And the lyrics definitely didn't help. Everyone was getting riled up at first, but as the song went on, the excitement dropped further and further, and by the end, everyone just stood there not saying a word. But that was because someone was fully lost in the sound. No, everyone was fully lost in the sound. Some of them just stared at Fez, completely entranced. There was definitely something about Fez's singing voice that captivated people. Even as I battled fear and nausea in the middle of the crowd, I found myself listening very closely to her song, not wanting to miss it. Goosebumps sprang all over me. For a moment it felt like the air itself had frozen over. The song ended. Fez was looking down at the stage, swaying her body from side to side as she soaked in the last echoes of the music. And then she suddenly looked back up, and without even gazing down for a second, she instantly... Oh. Right, we did green last. Looked at me. Okay, let's see what happens if we do red. And it wasn't like she'd just glanced in the general direction of my eyes, or like she'd briefly made eye contact with me or anything like that. Fez was blatantly looking right at me. I'd even go as far as to say she was staring at me, fixedly, as if evaluating my existence, as if searching deep within my heart. Her gaze was all too intense, and yet, somehow she seemed a little sad. Here we go. Before I knew it, I was slowly walking on a rooftop all alone. The wind was extremely strong, blowing raindrops into me from the side. What was strange, though, was that I didn't feel cold. I remembered this place. It felt like I'd been there many times before. Oh, I knew who it was now. This dreary scenery, surrounded by a fence. It was the school rooftop. I took a look around me, but the rain had made everything so hazy I couldn't make out anything. It was surreal. It felt like the world itself had become blurred. Oh, there she is. Beyond the haze on the other side of the fence was Fez. She was standing there facing me, and she was soaking wet. She was looking straight at me, just like at the concert. And in her right arm, just like before, she was gripping that sword-like mic stand tightly. The wind blowing from below sent Fez's soaked hair fluttering furiously in the air. If she even slightly lost her balance, she would definitely fall, and at this height, that would be a death sentence. Just looking at her made me stop dead in my tracks. And yet, despite where she was, Fez stood tall, without the slightest hint of fear in her eyes. On the verge of tears, Fez gently extended her left hand toward me. Let's jump off together. It was almost as if she was asking me to go with her, trying to seduce me. I couldn't give any response. I had no idea what to do. Fez said nothing back to me either. She just spread her arms out wide, taking on a pose as if she'd been crucified. Suddenly, the rain and the wind stopped. I tried to say something, but I couldn't make a sound. Nothing would come out of my mouth. Fez's body slowly tilted backward. Everything seemed to be happening in slow motion. I tried to reach out toward Fez, but my own movements were in slow motion too, so I could only look on in frustration as my arms slowly extended out in front of me. Fez was already closing her eyes, and not long after, her figure disappeared from my line of sight. Alright. What was that about? God, that's depressing. I've been getting lost in my own delusions as usual, but it all gone south pretty quickly. Well, that just goes to show how strong the aura Fez gave off truly was. She sort of had this sense of ruinous beauty to her. That said, I didn't have the slightest fucking clue what ruinous beauty was supposed to mean though. Lol. Okay, soz lamau. In the end, I got sick with the size of the crowd at that concert, so I had to rush to leave the venue. As a result, I barely watched any of the performance at all. And honestly, I never wanted to go ever again. Well then, guess I'll log on to ESO or something. That ought to rid me of this depression. To me, ESO was my life. It was my happy place, a breath of fresh air that let me forget all about the real world. As long as I could immerse myself in ESO, I could forget about all my troubles. I could stop being me and instead wander Baselard as Neidhart. Baselard as Neidhart. But today, for some reason, Neidhart was a little off. Yeah, I knew that he relied entirely on my inputs and my decisions, but somehow I found myself struggling to pull off things I could normally do with my eyes closed. This game was supposed to be a breath of fresh air, but today, the more I played it, the more irritated I got by it. What the fuck, dude? I'm gonna fucking delete you, I swear to God. I knew it was all my fault, but I still took my anger out on Neidhart. God damn it, I'm so fucking pissed off! I yanked at my hair and kicked the bare steel wall. Having let out all my anger, I took a deep breath and sat back down in my chair. I stared vacantly at my monitor. Neidhart was just standing there facing toward the gates of the city of Shangri-La, free of my control. His back was facing toward me, just as it always was when I fought enemies, and of course, he was at the maximum level. I wonder what level I am. Had the human known as Nishijo Takumi leveled up even slightly since he'd started playing ESO? No, since he'd been born. If I had, then why was I still so bad at talking to people even though I was nearly an adult? Why was I a borderline shut-in? If I didn't log in as Neidhart for weeks, would he also turn into a shut-in like me? Whose eyes are those eyes? I suddenly remember those words as I stared at Neidhart's back. I was mildly interested in what Neidhart would do when I wasn't controlling him. So figuring I'd observe him for a little bit, I left my keyboard alone as I ate some chips. If Neidhart had his own ego, then surely he'd waltz right into the city of Shangri-La, wind blowing against his shoulders, right? He was the hero everyone worshipped after all. Oh. We did red last time. Hey, Neidhart. I'm always looking at you, you know? Are you aware of that? Where are we going now? And then... let's go to the 2D world. I hadn't typed anything and yet Neidhart still spoke. Thinking it was just an optical illusion, I rubbed my eyes, but the message was still there, displayed in the chat. Go to the 2D world? What was that supposed to mean? Even you can be a hero, we'll fight together. Are you talking to me? You're not into 3D, right? You couldn't care less about it. Well, yeah, but... Neidhart was speaking to me, the player controlling him. What the fuck? Did he have a will of his own after all? Place your hand on the monitor. When you do, you'll be able to enter Baselard. As Nishijo Takumi, the password is... whose eyes are those eyes? But I refuse. If I get the opportunity to go to the 2D world, I'm for sure picking an Oroge. Oroge? Baselard is all yours, Neidhart. After replying, I used force shutdown to turn off my computer. I'll tell you exactly what happened. I reluctantly decided to go to school today, but before I knew it, I found myself going to buy a phone with my little sister. I'm sure you don't understand what I'm saying, but I don't really understand it either. I thought I was going insane. What are you mumbling about, big bro? Huh. Well, either way, I asked you what you think of this one, so what do you think? I think I want to go home. Besides, how many times do I have to tell you that I don't need a cell phone? God, it hurts having a sister this brain dead. When I'd gone to school today, Nanami had made her assault right in my classroom. After happily saying, "Wow, you actually came to school today," she'd ordered me to go out and buy a phone with her once school was over. Once the bell rang, I tried to escape without her noticing, but I'd forgotten how quick Nanami was on her feet. So after being chased and easily caught up to, I found myself being dragged all the way to the front of the station. I didn't want to go anywhere near the station, and I felt like that the whole way there. Even now I would have felt like I was going to throw up. Nanami, though, not giving a damn about what I felt, was busy admiring the many different models on display in front of the store. I tried to wrap my head around why exactly Nanami was so insistent about getting me a phone, but I just got a headache instead. "Here, look at this one! Isn't it such a cute colour? You should get this one!" Since she was asking for my opinion, I gave a simple reply. "That's fine." Actually, it might be a bit too cutesy for you. It doesn't really fit you, you know? See, it didn't even matter what I said. That would happen regardless. I completely lost track of how many times I'd said "that's fine" by this point. She'd asked for my opinion, but she didn't actually intend to listen to it. This was exactly why 3D girls sucked so much ass. Is everything okay, big bro? Are the crowds getting to you? How about we take a break at Mickey D's? MCD, the fucking prime hangout spot for DQNs. That place was hell incarnate. I violently shook my head no. Gotcha, we'll hurry up and pick one out then. Problem is, I'm still mixed between this one and this one. I sighed, deciding to just leave Nanami behind and go home. While Nanami was intensely examining the array of cell phones, I took my chance to slip away. Right as I turned toward 107, I saw something so strange it stopped me dead in my tracks. We'll find out next time on Borderline Games what the thing was that stopped Takumi dead in his tracks. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Chaos Head, and I will see you next time. Have a great evening. I will see you then. Bye bye.